Before we get into the video, guys, I have a new Discord server. The link to join this will be in the description. We will be able to talk about different stuff with college basketball and do Q&As, and I'll announce my videos and stuff like that. So make sure you click the link to join the Discord server. Let's get into the video. Sup, guys, it's Alex here, and welcome to the March 8th edition of the Bracketology update. Man, I am so excited. We are only 1 week away from Selection Sunday, where I'll be releasing the tournament predictions video and March Madness truly begins. But the madness began last night. I mean, in the Mountain West Championship game, Utah State hit a crazy three to beat San Diego State to win the championship, and Utah State is now safely in the field. And San Diego State has now fallen from a 1 seed to a 2 seed. And then in the Ohio Valley Conference, we had Belmont beat Murray State on a last-second layup to win by 1 point. They are now in the field too. They have clinched their conference championship spot. They'll probably be like a 13 or 14 seed depending on how their bracket goes. But it is time for some more conference championships. Today we have Liberty versus Lipscomb in the ASUN championship. And then we have a couple more that I just can't think of off the top of my head. For some reason, I don't know what I'm thinking. But I am super excited for them. I'm going to be watching tons of college basketball. Today's the last regular season day for some conferences like the Big Ten. And I'll also be doing my conference tournament predictions. I think I'm going to be doing releasing the SEC and ACC today, maybe the Big East. But then tomorrow we'll definitely have the Big Ten and the Pac-12 out and maybe the Big East, just depending on how it goes. But taking a look at the bracket itself, there's been a pretty good amount of movement. Now, this bracket is as of noon on March 8th. It's going to change throughout the course of the day as teams punch their tickets to the tournament, and then like Big Ten teams lose and stuff, and there's going to be tons of movement across the bracket. But this one is as of noon, so make sure you take a note of that when I'm going through these predictions, because it's probably going to change when Joe Lunardi updates it throughout the course of the day. So taking a look at the Midwest Regional up here in Indianapolis in the top left, which I will be seeing the Elite Eight, and I'm pretty sure it's probably about a 90 to 95% chance I will be seeing the Sweet 16 up here. We have Kansas remaining the 1 seed. Then the only movement up here, we have West Virginia is now up to a 7 after beating Baylor, which yesterday I did overreact a little bit. I had said that I would never pick West Virginia to win a first-round game because they were absolute trash in yesterday's bracketology. But I do have to give them credit. They did go out and beat Baylor, so I may have to pick them to win a game. I may have to go back on my word on that one. They did impress me. Then Creighton is now up to a 2. Now, in the East Regional, we have Dayton up to a number 1 seed now. They are on the inside track to getting a 1 seed as long as they can take care of business in their A10 championship or A10 tournament to lead them to a championship. I'll probably do a predictions video for that tournament as well. Then we have Rutgers now up to an 8. Utah State is near the field as an 11, and they will be staying in the field. As I mentioned earlier, they did win their conference championship. Then we have Kentucky now up to a 2 seed. Even though they lost, or they didn't have Ashton Hagans for that game, he stayed in Lexington. They somehow came back from 18 down to beat Florida on the road. That was a huge win for them. Huge boost to their morale and a huge boost to their chances of winning the championship or even reaching the Final Four. I did not think that they would win that game, but they surprised me and ended up winning, so kudos to them. And then over in the South Regional, we have Baylor remaining the 1 seed. They are limping into the tournament at this point. I think they've lost like 3 out of their last 5 games or something like that. Then Little Rock is down to a 16. Marquette is down to a 9. Auburn is up to a 5. Virginia got a strong home win against Louisville yesterday. Then Stanford and Indiana are the playing game there as the 11 spot. Then Providence is up to a 7. They are continuing their hot run through the Big East leading up to the tournament. Arizona State is now up to a 10. Then if we take a look at the West Regional, we have Gonzaga as the 1. Arizona is now down to an 8 after losing at home to Washington last night. Then we have Louisville down to a 4. As I mentioned earlier, they did lose to Virginia. Then Penn State is down to a 6. They had a really bad loss yesterday. They lost on the road to Northwestern, who is like 9-20, something like that. Some awful record to where they are the punching bag of the Big Ten, and that is just a really bad loss for a Penn State team that was trying to compete for a share of the Big Ten title, I think, or at least like a top 4 seed, something like that. And then the playing game is NC State and Texas, which Texas might have blown their at-large chances last night. They lost by like 20 to Oklahoma State at home. It was not a good look for them. Then Seton Hall is now down to a 3. I think they lost to Villanova yesterday. I want to say it was either Villanova or no, I think it was Creighton. One of those two. I think it ended up being Creighton. That was a pretty good game to watch. They just couldn't hold on to it at the end. Then Colorado is now down to a 7. East Tennessee State is now up to a 10. San Diego State, as I mentioned earlier, lost in their Mountain West Championship game. They are now down to a 2. And then Eastern Washington is now up to a 15. So before I get into the actual predictions and stuff, I want to go and show you guys the bubble. The last 4 buys are USC, who got a really good home win against UCLA yesterday. Then Arizona State, Marquette with Marcus Howard. They're kind of getting close to the cut line depending on some bid thieves. They need to start winning some games in the Big East tournament. And then UCLA. Last four in are Indiana, Stanford, Texas, and NC State. First four out are Richmond, Xavier, Cincinnati, and Wichita State. And then the next four out are Mississippi State, Memphis, Purdue, and Northern Iowa, which it looks like Northern Iowa probably will not end up making the tournament. But I will be giving away 2 NCAA tournament tickets. I will be giving it to 2 separate winners, one each, if I hit 5,000 subscribers by March 17th, which is next Tuesday, 9 days away at the beginning of the first 4 games in Dayton. I think we can do it. We're only about 570 now. We are starting to pick up the pace in getting these subscribers. Thank you guys for all the support you've been giving me on my channel. And I think if we can get 570 subscribers in 9 days, I think we can do it, especially with the actual NCAA tournament video coming out on Sunday. I will be giving away those tickets, so make sure you subscribe. How to enter the NCAA tournament ticket giveaway will be in the description below. All you got to do is just subscribe to me with post notifications on. Take a screenshot of you being subscribed. Follow me on Instagram at AlexPrice24, and then DM me a screenshot of you being subscribed. Tell me what your closest NCAA tournament location is and your favorite college basketball team, and you will be set. So now we will go ahead and move into the predictions. As you can see, this is a bit of a different bracket setup than what I had been doing. I am using a different computer now. For some reason, the link that I usually use for my Excel brackets led me to this bracket, which I mean isn't too bad, but well, it's a bit different. So we'll just kind of go with the flow here. Kansas obviously will beat Winthrop, and I'm putting a 1 here to show that they're going to win. Yeah, Kansas moving forward there. Then Houston and LSU. I'm actually going to go with LSU here. They've been kind of struggling on the defensive end recently. I think they get the victory here though and move on in the 9/8 upset. I'm going to go with BYU, who's one of the best offensive teams in the nation, to beat Tulsa. Then I'm going to go with an upset pick here. I know Wisconsin is really strong this season, but I just can't really get behind them in this situation. Plus New Mexico State, they haven't lost since like December 15th. I say this every single bracketology that I do. They've won, I think, 20 games in a row, something like that now. I think they get the victory here and pull off the upset. As a 13 seed, I really like them there. Then Iowa, I think with Luka Garza, who's, I'd say he's right there with Obi Toppin in the National Player of the Year contender race. I think I think Obi Toppin ends up getting the National Player of the Year, but no slack to, or no whatever it is, to Luka Garza. He's been playing out of his mind. The team is just a 6 seed, and the voters usually like the teams that are like up there in the rankings, and Obi Toppin is the reason why Dayton's a 1 seed, so that's why he's probably going to win the National Player of the Year. And then we have Duke beating Belmont. West Virginia will beat USC. I am... Yesterday in that bracketology, as I mentioned earlier, I said I would never pick West Virginia even win a first-round game, mark it right there. But, of course, the day I say that, they go out and beat Baylor, so I got to give them credit for that. Then we have Creighton beating Wright State. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we do have Kansas moving on here past LSU. Then I'm going to go with an upset pick here and go with New Mexico State moving on as the 13th seed to the Sweet 16. I think that they can get the job done there against BYU. BYU is one of the best offensive teams in the nation, but if those shots don't fall, I don't think they'll be able to move on here to the Sweet 16. Plus, New Mexico State almost upset Auburn last year, which would have prevented Auburn's run to the Final Four. I think they're a team to watch out for in the tournament. But then I'm going to go with Duke over Iowa. I think that one's actually kind of a 50-50 game. But I'm going to go with Mike Krzyzewski. He knows how to win in March, but he also knows how to get upset in March by like Lehigh, Mercer, and even almost UCF last year. I think that Duke will be able to get the job done. They impressed me again in that North Carolina game last night. I think they'll be able to move on. And then we have Creighton moving on here past West Virginia. Then for a spot in the Elite Eight, we do have Kansas moving on past New Mexico State. Then we have Creighton moving on past Duke. Creighton is kind of like BYU, but a better BYU. They are now up to a 2 seed. I think they're one of the best offensive efficiency teams in the nation. I think they get the job done there, but then fall short to Kansas, who is going to move on to the Final Four there. And then we'll move down here to the East Region. I'm going to try to keep this video under 15 minutes, so bear with me. Then we have Dayton moving on here past the winner of NC Central and Robert Morris. That one won't matter too much. Rutgers got a huge road win over Purdue yesterday. That's why I think they'll get the victory here over Florida, who just completely collapsed down the stretch against Kentucky. Then we have Butler moving on past Yale. That's probably a best-case scenario matchup for Butler. Usually I'd probably pick a 12 to upset them there, but I don't like Yale in that sort of situation. Maryland, I think, will be able to beat Liberty with Anthony Cohen and Jalen Smith. Michigan, I think, will be able to hold off Utah State, though Utah State, you better watch out for them because they surprised San Diego State and they could surprise some people in the actual tournament. Villanova, I think, will be able to beat Colgate. Iota Sumu and Illinois will be able to beat Oklahoma. I really don't like Oklahoma this season. Then we have Kentucky moving on past UC Irvine. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we do have Dayton and Obi Toppin moving past Rutgers. Maryland with Anthony Cohen and Jalen Smith will be moving on past Butler. Villanova, this is a rematch of, I think, the 2018 National Championship game here, Jesus, in the 3 versus 6. matchup. We do have Villanova moving on, though. I think Juwan Howard's done a great job with Michigan, getting him to this point in the season. I mean, they were almost like a #1 team. I think they made it up to #4 in the rankings before falling back to earth. But I think Villanova is going to move on to the Sweet 16. Then we have Kentucky moving on past Illinois. Kentucky's been pretty impressive recently. Dayton will be able to move on to the Elite Eight here past Maryland. Kentucky, I think if they can play the way they did in the first half against Tennessee and the second half against Florida, I think they can definitely win the national championship. But I don't know if I'd go too far because I am going to have, I don't know who to go here. Dayton and Kentucky, it's a battle of, do we want Obi Toppin and the underdog story to move on past Kentucky with the really good team, future NBA players. They are gelling at the right time. This one's really tough for me to say, but I can't pick Kentucky with the way they collapsed against Tennessee and the way they played the first half against Florida. I got to go with Obi Toppin and Dayton moving on here to the Final Four. Then if we scroll over here, we'll go ahead and knock out the Midwest Regional. Actually, no, this is the West Regional. I don't know why I had it as the Midwest. We're going to have Gonzaga move on here, past Prairie A&M and Siena. It doesn't really matter who's going to end up winning that one. I don't know why I put that one there. We are going to delete that and put the one here with Gonzaga. There we go. Arizona will fall to Texas Tech here. I think Chris Beard's done a great job with Texas Tech this season. They've been able to deal with the departure of Jarrett Culver, and Arizona has just not been too impressive this season. Then I really like Stephen F. Else on here as a 28-3 team, just not against Ohio State. They are a team to watch out for if they get paired with like Butler or something, but I like Ohio State in that matchup. Then I'm going to go with Louisville here, moving on past Akron. I'm going to go with an upset pick here and go with Texas to beat NC State and then to beat Penn State. I know Texas did just end up losing at home by like 20 to Oklahoma State, but Penn State lost to Northwestern, and NC State's just been kind of inconsistent throughout the course of the season. And you got to have some upset picks in your bracket. I'm going to go with Texas moving on there. Then we have Seton Hall and Miles Powell moving on here past Hofstra. Then I go with East Tennessee State moving on as the 10/7. If you guys have been watching my bracketologies, you know how much I love East Tennessee State. I think they can easily get the victory there over Colorado, who is faltering at the wrong time. I think Colorado lost yesterday to, I want to say Utah. Don't quote me on that, but they did lose, and that's why they're down to a 7. Then I'm going to go with San Diego State moving on here past Eastern Washington. Then first spot in the Sweet 16, we do have Gonzaga moving on here past Texas Tech. Then I think Ohio State can beat Louisville. Louisville just can't really seem to get much going on offense when Jordan Nwora is shut down. And plus, I think Ohio State is turning it on when it matters most. They struggled throughout the late January and early February, but they have turned the corner. They are looking like a strong team heading into March Madness. I'm going to go with Miles Powell and Seton Hall moving on here to the Sweet 16. Then I'm going to go with a huge upset here, 10-2, East Tennessee State over San Diego State, battle of the states here. And I'm going to go with the underdog here. They did go on the road and beat LSU, which doesn't look as good of a win as it did at the beginning whenever that actually did happen. Then they gave Kansas a game. They ended up losing by like 10 or something like that, but they looked pretty impressive against them. And San Diego State, I just can't get behind them as a Final Four team at this point. They just haven't been too impressive. They did beat Creighton by like 30 earlier in the season, but that was earlier in the season. I like East Tennessee State to pull off the 10-2 upset. Then we have Gonzaga moving on here to the Elite Eight over Ohio State. Then Seton Hall, as much as I want to pick East Tennessee State to continue their Cinderella run to the Elite Eight, I do have to pick Seton Hall moving on. But then I'm going to go with Gonzaga moving on to the actual Final Four itself. Mark Few's done a great job with that program. I think they get the victory there. Then up here in the South Regional, we do have Baylor moving on past Little Rock. Marquette with Marcus Howard will be able to beat St. Mary's. St. Mary's, it took them double overtime to beat Pepperdine last night. That was almost a crazy game, which would have knocked St. Mary's down to like a 10 or 11. Then we're going to have Vermont pulling off the upset here, 12-5 over Auburn. Vermont, I think, will end up winning the America East Championship, and I think they could surprise some people in March. Oregon will be able to move on past North Texas. Virginia will be able to beat the winner of Stanford and Indiana. Then Michigan State will beat Bradley. Providence is looking like a really good team to watch out for. They are turning it on when it matters most. And then Florida State will be able to beat North Dakota State. Then first spot in the Sweet 16, we do have Baylor moving on past Maryland. Or past Marquette. I don't know how I put the one there. Marquette is looking really good with Marcus Howard, but they live and die by him, and if he runs into a tough game, I think Baylor's going to force him into that tough game, and they're going to end up losing. Then we got Oregon with Peyton Pritchard moving on here, past Vermont. Then Michigan State will be able to beat Virginia. Those two teams seem to always end up playing each other in the tournament, kind of like Michigan State and Louisville. Then we have Florida State moving on here, past Providence, though Providence could definitely pull off the 7-2 upset and surprise some people. But then first spot in the Elite Eight, we're going to go with Peyton Pritchard and Oregon moving on here. Then Michigan State will be able to beat Florida State. That one is kind of a 50-50 matchup for me, but I'm going to go with Tom Izzo, who has the NCAA tournament experience, and get Michigan State to move on there, which sets up a battle of the green teams between Oregon and Michigan State in the Elite Eight, and I'm going to go with Michigan State moving on here to the Final Four. Michigan State is absolutely tearing it up recently. They're looking like the #1 team that people picked them to be in the preseason. But then in the Final Four itself, it's going to be Kansas versus Dayton, a rematch of the Maui. And I'm going to go with an upset pick here and go with Dayton moving on with Obi Toppin. I know a lot of people aren't sold on Dayton, but I am. I think they get the revenge from the Maui Invitational here and move on to the national championship game. Then Gonzaga and Michigan State. I am torn on this matchup. I think I went with Michigan State in the last couple bracketologies that I've been doing. But I am going to switch it up and go with Gonzaga here. Gonzaga's been pretty impressive, and I don't think they really get the respect they deserve out there in the West Coast Conference. And then for a spot, or actually to win, I don't know why I'm saying for a spot, to win the national championship, I'm going to go with Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I think they get the job done there, and they win the national championship game. Mark Few gets his first national championship, and Gonzaga does win the national championship. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I know this has been a kind of a long video for a bracketology, but I really appreciate your guys' support on the channel and all the different bracketologies that I've been doing. Make sure you check out my conference tournament predictions. Let me know your own tournament predictions below and join the Discord server, which I will be linking. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all later.